I think we're muted.
Oh.
All right. I'm Ben.
I'm Jen.
This is another Give Them an Argument philosophy Friday.
Look, I don't want to know anything about the death threats because when the FBI shows up, I want to be able to honestly and convincingly say I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the scene in The Sopranos.
Exactly.
If you've just if you've never watched The Sopranos, put your fingers in your ear for a second. But after Janice kills Richie Aprile, that's the one she was married to. So Tony has just come home from helping her from helping her get rid of the body, and Carmela is like, "Where's Richie?" And Tony says, "Carmela, this many years of marriage, don't make me make you an accessory after the fact."
Yeah, we've been married for 7 years.
So if
I don't want to be an accessory after
so my constant,
especially not when it involves somebody named Skippy the Bear.
Yes. Me and Skippy the Bear and Vosh and our constant assassination plots. Jen just doesn't want to know about it. I've been told that Skippy the Bear is that dude's term for like a specific YouTuber, but I prefer to believe that he's just a character in his mind palace. Skippy the Bear. If you have no idea what we're talking about, please don't worry about it. You're better off.
I kind of envision him as Yogi Bear.
Yeah, fair enough.
Actually, we got married for health insurance, but that's a whole other story.
Also not true. Possibly got married sooner than we would have. It's not why we got married. Yeah, I don't really know have a good answer to this question. But
if anybody has an answer,
yeah, stick it in the chat.
Shout out.
Absolutely. So we live. Actually, no. Trying to think how to transition here from me and Skippy the Bear trying to run around assassinating people.
Are you like, who is that runs around with Yogi Bear, his old nephew or whatever?
Yeah.
Is that you?
I don't at least get to be Yogi and Skippy maybe as my adorable nephew.
No.
Yeah. So we were talking about philosophy of religion.
Are we?
Last time. We're not yet.
Boo-boo!
Boo.
You're boo-boo.
Boo Bear, yeah. All right. Not especially.
Dude, hold your horses.
Yeah. Though
we're giving exams.
We are. Although I was just talking to Thaddeus Russell earlier today. I just finished teaching a logic and politics class at Renegade University, and we were talking about what I might teach in the future. Like, I had a blast teaching this. I'd be happy to come back. But I was saying that since I did, that, and I did the very similar class for the School of Social and Cultural Change, Michael Albert's thing before that, I'm going to teach that class again once. So the next thing I teach should be something very different. So we were talking about doing like a straight philosophy class for that, like maybe something about either Kant or Hume. So, failing it's a business conversation, wasn't really any contrarianism going on.
Was that when I heard you yelling outside when you were on the phone with the dog? Or when you were not on the phone with the dog. You were on the phone, but you were outside with the dog, and I heard you yelling, and you were like, "Would you just listen to me?" Was that him?
What? I didn't say anything like that.
Don't lie.
Are you okay? I really didn't. It was a very friendly conversation. I definitely did not say anything.
Maybe you were yelling at Lucy.
I don't think I even did that. All I remember saying to Lucy a couple times, "Hey, Lucy, come on."
Okay.
There's really no yelling.
Okay.
It's a very happy conversation, but let's see. British guy I was saying that I had discovered. I'm not quite sure who you referred to there.
If we're going to read books by a British guy, that guy should be Patrick Samphire.
Yes. Yes. As Patrick Samphire is a British novelist who I say with no conflicts of interest, everybody should check out.
Absolutely.
So
one of our favorites.
Yeah, well, it's one of the best things about Renegade University. There's no paper. It's just class. Yeah, I can't stand grading them. That is one of my all-time least favorite things. So, in any case, this is today. You heard me yelling?
Well, today, yesterday, the day before.
Okay.
Basically every day.
Okay. Yesterday or the day before, I could imagine that I might yell. But
it's basically a daily thing.
Tuesday, maybe?
No, every day.
Oh my God. All right. I'm being defamed. But in any case, Tuesday there was a podcast conversation where there was a little bit of yelling. That happened.
There was that.
There was that.
That was terrifying.
But I think I've been living yelling free since Tuesday. So
except when you yelled at me that time. No, Ben doesn't yell at me.
I really don't.
I've never done anything that would inspire yelling.
Well,
so I don't know why he would yell at me.
I don't know about that.
Be quiet.
But I haven't yelled. So
you're very restrained.
Let's see. Lectures on the history of. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
That was not Patrick Samphire.
Not Patrick Samphire. That was a different British guy. They have like all kinds of guys there. Not just the one. Yeah, I do know who you're talking about. This guy is super interesting. If anybody knows his name or looks it up real quickly and wants to put it in the chat, I'd be happy to share it because
British guy.
Yes. Well,
if anybody knows the British guy's name,
just list all the British guys you know. Like every British guy you can think of, put it in the chat. They'll say, no, that's not that one, not that one, not that one. You know, it's Boris Johnson, C.S. Lewis. You know, just keep listing British guys, and I'll tell you which one I was thinking of. No, he is what is it? It's like called like Open University or something. But he has these lectures that are on YouTube. He's a historian, and they're really good, really interesting. Not Richard Dawkins, no. Yet another British guy.
Lots of British.
They're yes. This is Andy actually came up with it. That is in fact the British guy.
You can always count on J. Andrew.
Yes. Yeah. Which is so. Yes, Alec Ryrie, I guess how you say that. So he is a historian, and I watched a bunch of his lectures on the history of religion, which are actually super interesting. Like he has the first one was, I think it was just randomly recommended to me by the YouTube algorithm. I don't even know why, but I'm glad it was because these were really interesting lectures. The first one was called How to Be a Medieval Atheist, and it's about looking at old like medieval court records about people who were, like medieval non-believers and the sort of person who would have been this in the Middle Ages, because it's not like, because this is like the really interesting thing about it is that if you're living in that society in medieval Europe, all of the scholars, all of the people who, you'd have any reason to believe knew what they were talking about were all religious. And so if you come to non-religious conclusions in that circumstances, he has this fun line in there about how in some ways it's like the like same personality type as someone now who might be like, I don't know. I mean, they tell me that the earth is round, but that sounds wrong to me, like this sort of like guy at the bar stool who just sort of feels like expert opinion sounds like nonsense to him. So
I know some people like that.
Sure. Fair enough. So, you might think one is more justified than the other, but it's an interesting point. It's a really interesting lecture, and the later stuff going through the Reformation and the sort of rise of different kinds of skepticism under those circumstances is definitely worthwhile. So, also somebody mentioned Sam Cedar in the chat. Not a British guy at all, like an American guy, but they weren't suggesting him as a British guy. But to whether Andy had shown him his Velveteen Rabbit, his drawing of him as the Velveteen Rabbit, and I don't know if he has, but I was watching the Majority Report for a few minutes this afternoon, and I saw they were like said something about wanting to debate Yaron Brook. So I sent Sam and Yaron an email to try to set that up, which Yaron, people may recall, was the Ayn Rand Institute guy I debated who said that I wanted to take away his TV. So I think that would be very funny and, very.
But we have a TV.
Yeah,
we don't need his TV.
I don't know why we'd be taking it away,
okay.
But there we go. So, in any case, philosophy of religion. Last time we were talking about some of the big arguments for the existence of God, the cosmological argument, also called first cause argument, the teleological argument, also called the argument from design, and
the ontological argument. Also called the argument from spaghetti.
Is it called that? I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't remember that?
I vaguely remember the plate of spaghetti analogy for the ontological argument, but yes, the ontological argument is pretty much also known as the ontological argument.
Sure.
Because it's such a weird specific thing that, doesn't rarely called anything else. So the idea is that the plate of spaghetti that exists is better than the plate of spaghetti that doesn't exist. It's more perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fair enough. So, in any case,
I saw the shirt that Ben was going to wear on the bed when I went in to get dressed, and he was wearing a t-shirt earlier, and that was laying on the bed, and I thought, well, I can't wear something that, like orange or something that's going to clash with that, so.
There you go. I don't believe they gave out awards for that. But yeah, so one objection you could make to some of these arguments, depending on how the person who was presenting the argument understood what the conclusion was supposed to be, is that even if you think like the design argument shows that something or other designed the world or the universe, or the cosmological argument shows something or other must have created the universe, there's a gap between that and the specific sort of God that theists typically have in mind, which is a being that combines.
I'm sorry, what?
So the sort of God that theists typically have in mind is a being that combines
the omnis.
The omnis. So omnipotence.
Not the hotels.
No, not the hotels. Not the magazine Ellen Datlow used to edit that was fiction for. That was called Omni. Oh, okay. But rather omnipotence or
all powerful,
omniscience,
all knowing,
omnibenevolence,
all good.
So so these are the three properties that traditional theism says that God has, and often we'll say really insist that this is these are all definitional to God. God would not be God if God lacked any of these. So this is sometimes, I think we mentioned last time, referred to as the all PKG God, all powerful, all knowing, all good. So
sounds like a rapper.
Sure, all PKG. Yeah, and there are a million intro to philosophy classes where people have had to come up with multiple choice questions about this, and the D answer that's wrong is omnivorous, or omni, whatever the other omni words are. But in any case, so we talked about all the obvious arguments for the existence of such a God. And again, this is a objection you can make to some of them, that, even if something created the world, even if you get to that point where something other external to the universe has to have created it, then there's a big gap between that and the all PKG conception of God. If you read David Hume's dialogue concerning natural religion, he has a lot of fun with this, says, look, how do you know it wasn't a committee of gods, or,
because then nothing would have ever been created.
Oh! So, he has a line about how if there was a planet full of inhabited by sentient spiders, which for all we know there might be, that is really in the David Hume's dialogues concerning natural religion, the spiders would probably think that the world had been not like what we assume, like rationally created by a non-physical being, but in some ways it's like a perfect version of us. But the spiders would assume that the your world was mindlessly spun out by a cosmic spider. So in any case, yeah, that's right. It would be Lil PKG. So
when we get back to Atlanta, you should start up a rap career.
Yeah,
it's a big rap scene there.
Yeah, I think there might be
a little PKG.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd do very well. But indeed, there is actually like just fun historical fact, like in Hume and Immanuel Kant and some of these other people, like in the these late 18th century philosophers, way more speculation about the possibility of aliens than you might think. That was like a hot topic. I think people were starting to be more aware of other planets and stuff, and advances in astronomy, better telescopes and whatnot. But in any case, I have not read Children of Time now. Yeah, that's a good point. Hume really should have thought of that. So, in case,
Hume, such a slacker.
Yeah. So if you think about the other end, what are the sort of main arguments against the suggestion that an all PKG being exists? Then there are like a few that you could go with. Some people have thought maybe that, well, okay. I'll spare you. I promise I won't make you actually watch this, but there's The Simpsons where their neighbor Ned Flanders is very religious, and Homer asks him if Jesus could have microwaved a burrito so hot that he himself could not have eaten it, and so that's a version of that is sometimes called the stone paradox. Mm-hmm. Could an all-powerful being create a stone so heavy that he himself could not lift it? And you might try like spinning out a few puzzles about the omni properties like that. Not totally clear to me how big a problem that is. Like, it always sort of seems like it's a fun one, and I used to think that was a better argument, but like I think the more I think about it over the years, that just seems like whether or not that's a problem just depends on exactly how you define omnipotent. And it seems, I remember Brad Coquelet, who is a philosophy professor, Miami, where we went to grad school,
excellent professor, excellent human being.
Yes, big fan.
Everybody loves Brad.
But, I think he made a good point about this, that you could just say that define omnipotence as the property of being able to make actual anything that's logically possible. And, then you've gotten around the microwaving burritos and, all of that stuff. So yeah, and yeah, I'm sure there are other ways that you could define it that would capture some of what we mean by all powerful and not lead to quite this problem. So And then, of course, there's a whole category of objections that you could make, and this is probably more popular objections that are like just evidence-based objections. I mean, if I say that there's a if I say that there's a leprechaun, an invisible leprechaun dancing around in the palm of my hand right now. Yes, form. you would react in that manner. You would not think that I was telling that. You would not think that I was on the level when I said that. You would think that was bad.
I would think something was wrong with you.
Yes, and you certainly wouldn't. And in fact, I don't think you'd even just be agnostic about it. I think you would say, no, there is not. And even if I further specified that this invisible leprechaun danced around in the palm of my hand, I don't know, is singing Danny Boy at a frequency that human ears can't hear. Wow. And I further specified that he has magical powers that make him undetectable to any microscope you could come up with, etc. I don't think you would be agnostic.
No.
About whether there was this being existed.
No.
I think you would form the positive belief that there was no leprechaun. And if you think about why,
no.
I don't think anybody wants that. Well, I think if you're all good, you probably don't have murderous rages. I think that would be a moral defect.
Yeah. I imagine so.
Yeah. So, well, I'm not saying I see it. I just say I believe that it's there. I mean, I just told you it has magical powers. It's undetectable. So, you think about why you positively disbelieve in the leprechaun. You affirm the negation of the existence.
I do affirm that, yes.
Of the leprechaun. And I think that presumably, no comment. Presumably, you like the reason why, if you kind of take that apart and think about what would justify affirming the negation of the existence of the leprechaun,
is insanity.
Well, you suspect I'm insane, sure, but I mean, like, let's not, the belief itself should be evaluated on its own merits. But
an insane belief.
Yes, it's an insane belief, and the reason you think it's an insane belief is that, there's no evidence for it, and there's no evidence for anything that would lead us, that would nudge us in the direction of believing the leprechaun, and lacking any evidence, or any even indirect evidence that would make it slightly more anything like that, right? Then think, okay, Occam's razor, it's like yes,
slice that leprechaun right off of there.
Yes, Occam's razor goes whack. Yeah, you think the sort of fancy philosopher way of putting this is don't multiply entities beyond necessity. You should so ontological simplicity
isn't it beyond what is strictly necessary? Isn't that how it goes?
I don't know.
Maybe I'm just trying to be too fancy.
Strictly sounded unnecessary, so I cut it. Yeah. So it's given that principle that, if all else being equal, say, okay, should I believe in an extra entity, or should I disbelieve in the extra entity, all else being equal with regards to evidence, etc. That, the idea is that you have some reason to think no, and so you can certainly spin an argument for atheism out of there. Panos, see part 1 last week, which happily this is on YouTube.
Oh, somebody.
It's on YouTube, so it. Okay, it lives forever. In all of the embarrassing moments and everything, it all lives forever.
I've never had an embarrassing moment on the internet.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I may have had a few. having spent God knows how many thousands of hours, speaking into cameras, I have probably said some stuff that, at one point or another that I wish I hadn't. Or I'd be really impressed with somebody who could do all that without that. But in any case, so that would certainly be one. But there is a more basic objection to the claim that all PKG being exists, which is, so our friend Mark Warren, I think I'm stealing this from him, he says, all right, so if you imagine somebody told you that there was an invisible giant who walked around all day, every day, painting the sky yellow, which, I remember that was his original example, which unpleasantly reminds me of a Coldplay song, but otherwise, I like the example.
We're not here to bash Coldplay.
I mean, we could. It's always a good thing to do. But anyway, so your first objection wouldn't be, where's the evidence? What would be your first objection?
The first thing I would say is the sky is not yellow.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Your first objection would be, well, hold on. If that's true, why is the sky yellow?
Exactly.
And similarly, you could say, well, hold on. If the world was created and is ruled by a being that is completely perfect and completely morally good, then my first question would be,
why isn't the world that way?
Yeah, why exactly? Why do bad, why do bad things happen to good people?
Why do bad things happen?
Right. Why do bad things happen, period, right? So the world is full of, starvation, genocide, shark attacks,
the movie Sharknado.
The movie Sharknado exists. I don't know why a loving God would allow that.
Deathbed, the bed that eats.
Yeah, we might actually watch that at some point. If people don't know what we're talking about, there's an old. I'm sure if you just search in YouTube for Patton Oswalt Deathbed, you will hear his rant about this movie, which he said that.
Don't tell them.
Okay,
well, it's funny. Go look it up.
Okay, fair enough. So we did find that they do have that on our Apple TV, so we could rent Deathbed, the bed that eats,
which we will. We have to watch a B movie. We're going through these movie categories, and we have to watch a B movie. So I'm thinking that's going to be our B movie.
Right. So yeah, there are earthquakes, there's tsunamis, there are machete killings, people hacking each other.
See, well, now we've gone to another. Well, I guess we had genocide before.
Yeah, so this is right. So that list can be split into two categories. You want to take it from there?
Oh, well, there's evil that comes from people doing evil, like genocide, and then natural evil, which is just nature doing things that have bad consequences.
Right. Yes, kids get cancer, etc.
Adults get cancer.
We could go.
A very good friend of mine, her grandmother just died of cancer.
Right.
And it was a very traumatizing thing for the whole family.
Right. We could just spend the next half hour listing off terrible things that happened, but then we'd all be very depressed. So
let's not do that.
Let's just take our list so far as adequate, and just trust me when I say we could keep going. Yeah. So, given all that, that list. That list divides into two categories. You'd started to say that, and then we got.
No, I said it.
Okay, so the conventional terms for these people, will call this problem the problem of evil, which is very memorable and catchy, but it's also, I think, sometimes throws people a little bit because when you think about, I think for a couple of reasons, but one of them is when you think about what we're talking about.
You tend to think about moral evil, things that people do.
Yeah, human evil, moral
evil.
Yeah. So the list divides into two lists, both extensive, human evil or moral evil, and as one list, and natural evil is the other. And one of the reasons I think some people get thrown by the word evil is that, like natural evil sounds like almost like a category mistake, right? You know,
Mhm.
say nature isn't good or evil; it just
Yeah.
is. You know,
An earthquake isn't evil; it just is what it is, and then it causes, you know, it has the results that it has, but it's not like it intended to do those things.
Yeah, Charles, I've got some great news for you about how YouTube works. This is not lost. This is not like all those moments that, you know, Rutger Hauer's going on about in Blade Runner that are lost forever, like teardrops in the rain. All of this is preserved forever, so you can go back and watch the first half hour. But yeah,
I don't know how enlightening it was, but it's there.
But you can watch it. So, yeah, right. Which, yeah, I mean, is a like, yeah, God, I mean that speech, you know, I want more life, you know, I mean, like that itself, you could spin some problem of evil stuff about, you know, but yeah, so people think, okay, it seems weird to like, oh, what are you calling the earthquake evil? Like that seems like the sort of thing that you do as you're, you know, fantasizing about invisible leprechauns and claiming that they're, you know, people on YouTube you don't like or conspiring with Skippy the Bear to have you assassinated. So
you're implicating all these people, Ben.
So, appreciate that. So, yeah. So if you get stuck on that, you can just substitute for evil like undeserved suffering.
Mm.
You know, problem of undeserved suffering. You know,
unnecessary
suffering. There we go.
Is usually how it's put.
Yeah, unnecessary is probably better because that stays neutral about whether people getting what was coming to them, you know, would count as necessary or something that would justify suffering.
Like some suffering is necessary for the good that it brings about.
For example.
Oh, well, you know, you have to take your screaming, squalling kid in to get his vaccines, and the kid is not happy. You are not happy. The doctor is not happy, but good comes out of it.
Yeah, right.
Your kid doesn't die of measles.
Right.
That all the unvaccinated kids are passing around.
Yeah. So one one problem that I think, you know, is going to exist for a lot of potential solutions to the problem of evil is that when you think about necessary suffering, when you're thinking about like human actions, sure, it's easy, right? Like, you know, you take, yeah, the kid might suffer in various
the screaming, squalling kid
in various ways, or you might suffer because your kid is screaming and squalling, but it's necessary, and we don't have a way of accomplishing. You know, we're trying to accomplish X, and you can't accomplish X without Y. You know, it's the you know, Pink Floyd so wisely reminds us, you know, if you don't eat your meat, you know, you can't have your pudding. You know, if you want your X, you know, you have to have your Y.
I have dessert all the time, and I don't eat meat. So,
somebody should confront Roger Waters with that in an interview. You know, do you realize they're vegetarians who were able to eat pudding with no problem?
I love dessert.
Yeah. Also,
best part of my day. Well, parts.
Also, maybe my that lyric isn't from the perspective of somebody who's seen as a role model, but in any case, I think he did. I think he said
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I vaguely remember.
Yes.
This.
There was one in particular.
Like
that.
So Hurricane Katrina.
No, I think it was fairly recent.
Okay.
That he. Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember Pat Robertson saying many years ago that God gave Ariel Sharon cancer to punish him for withdrawing Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. So he has a lot of very specific thoughts about, you know, why God does things. Also, I always remember, you know, when I like, you know, channel surfing, I used to see his show, The 700 Club, and they do this thing where, like, he'd be there with his son Gordon Robertson or other people on the show, and he'd like link arms with them, like, you know, have his eyes closed, and he'd say that the, you know, Lord was telling him that there was a man in Ohio right now who was feeling terrible, whatever, back pain, and, you know,
there's a man in Ohio with back pain,
but like God is relieving that right now. And I was like, man, so God is willing to tell Pat, it's a man, he's in Ohio, what was suffering from, he won't give him like a name or address, you know, so we can all check up on this. But yeah, so when it comes to human actions, absolutely, we are beings of limited power. So even when we're trying to accomplish good things, sometimes we have to do things that inflict some degree of suffering to accomplish those good things. Happens all the time, right? You know, you have, you know, that you have to do things for some medical reason or other reason that cause pain in order to prevent much greater suffering later or accomplish some worthwhile goal. You know, you want to, you know, your exercise can involve pain, but you know, it's worth it.
Is it though?
It is. So thank you, Emil. I appreciate that. No yelling on that one. So
can't believe you got through a podcast without yelling.
Yeah. I usually get through podcasts without yelling. It's unusual that there's yelling. Yeah. Yes. Levy says Pat Robertson definitely tried to blame Katrina on gay people. I remember, because the gay quarter of New Orleans was actually less affected. Atheist Charles do jokingly suggested the gayness was a shield. So, oh God, I saw that too. Do you know who Milo Yiannopoulos is?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. I know a lot of the political media stuff that like I'll ask you about. You're like, I don't know, I don't care. Don't be a nerd, you know. So
look, in this public forum, I'm going to say yes, regardless of whether I know this person or not. So yes.
Okay. I don't think there's any shame in not knowing who Milo Yiannopoulos is. I think this definitely falls into the category if you're probably better off. But,
I don't know. The name is familiar.
Okay, so
which is enough for a yes.
He was a very prominent, like right wing, but like also, you know, he was like he'd go around. So he was this right wing gay guy, and he'd go around to do this speaking tour that was called like the Triggered Tour or something like that, where it would all be about how outrageously offensive he was. Yeah, exactly.
Like what you posted on Facebook the other day. Your life is better than mine if you don't understand this. And I was like,
yeah, it was about.
I don't get it whatsoever.
Yeah, it was a meme about political media stuff, so does not matter. But yeah, so Milo is basically just like a giant troll. But he fell out with like the people who had liked him stopped liking him because some interview clip or something came out where he made some kind of sketchy comments about the age of consent, and then he lost his book contract. He was disinvited from the Conservative Political Action Committee, etc. But recently, he has been having, you know, it is not true, as F. Scott Fitzgerald said, that there are no second acts in American lives. There are definitely second, third, and fourth acts for guys like Milo. And he's come back, and his latest reinvention of himself, he says he has discovered the Lord, and as part of this, he is now ex-gay. He is no longer gay. And he said, I swear I'm not making this up, that since he found the Lord and since he is no longer gay, which, by the way, I think he admits that he's still living with his husband. He just claims that he's just a roommate now because he's no longer gay.
Is his husband still gay?
That's a fascinating question. But he really has said, I swear I'm not making this up.
There's a t-shirt, you know, I'm not gay, but my girlfriend is, stuff like that.
He has said that since he was saved and since he's no longer gay, that dogs have stopped barking at him. that he said dogs always used to bark at him, but since he is saved and no longer gay,
dogs can smell the gay.
Apparently so. So, oh. Yeah. There's a. Okay, I think this is a joke, but like honestly, I would almost believe it. So, I think it's safe to say that Milo doesn't think very much of his audience's intelligence, but in any case, yeah. So, okay, so humans very frequently have to do things that involve some amount of suffering in order to bring about a greater good. And that makes sense because we have limited power. A problem, I think, for a whole category of possible solutions, the problem of evil, where you say, well, this is the greater good for which, the sake of which God is allowing these things, is that if the greater good is like a particular consequence that's going to be brought about later, then you're going to have a problem with, well, okay, hold on, why couldn't an all-powerful being just
bring about that good without the suffering being involved?
Right, exactly. So if you...
Why can't children be born immune to measles?
Right, exactly.
Why did they have to go scream and squall at the doctor's office?
I'm sure there are well-behaved children who do not scream and squall.
I don't think so.
At the doctor's office.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Fair enough. So, is he claiming to be a doctor now? Is he going to hire doctors? Is this?
I was happier before knowing about this.
Is this just, or do they only use faith healing to get rid of the gayness here? I had so many questions, but anyway.
There's a man in Ohio who is gay.
The Lord has lifted the gayness from him. Exactly. Okay, so let's think about some of the most popular proposed defenses against the problem of evil.
Well, you just said one, that we have to have evil to bring about a good.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, sort of the like God's great plan defense. I don't know if there's a fancy name for this one. Like that there's...
I think that's different.
Or do you just call it like the greater good defense? I don't know.
I think those are different things.
Okay, so
those are different things.
So so the God's great plan defense is the version of it where you say that
God has a plan and everything is part of God's plan, and we're human beings and we don't know God's plan.
Right. So that's getting into like skeptical theism, which let's maybe put a pin in that for a minute while we go through the non-skeptical ones. Yeah,
but the greater good is just,
sure,
suffering for the greater good.
Okay, so the fancy name for all these, so, I guess more precisely, so problem of evil is the problem of how to explain all of this, in theistic terms.
How to reconcile the existence of evil with the existence of the omni God.
Right. And one of the... you could say, okay, the argument from evil is the argument against the existence of God based on the problem of evil. And defenses against the argument from evil, the extremely fancy name for that is a theodicy. So a theodicy...
We like fancy.
...is an explanation of how to I think Milton has a line about, explaining God's ways to man. As an attempt to reconcile.
I think it's justify God's way to man.
Okay. Well, I clearly don't remember any of this, but
I thought you did your research.
In the general, I mean, I apparently I have slightly misremembered the wording of many of these things over the years. So yeah, right. We could also make a distinction between an interventionist God and the sort of God postulated by deism, which is roughly the view that God creates the universe and
gives it it's like the dominoes.
Right.
God kind of, sets the world in motion with his finger and then sits back and has a corona.
Right. Yes, and does not intervene while the rest of us have a corona. So,
oh boy.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. The clockmaker god, winds up the cosmic clock and then
Lets it go.
So one of the most popular theodicies or defenses against the argument from evil is the free will defense, which so you take a I don't know, like you try to think of one of the things that you'd want an interventionist god to intervene to stop. I don't know, pick an instance of evil.
The movie Sharknado.
Oh yeah.
You would want God to step in at the moment of this movie proposal and say, whoa.
Yeah.
We're not having this.
At the initial pitch meeting, somebody would be struck by lightning, or somehow or another there would be a miracle to prevent Sharknado from existing. I mean, we could have done like one of the world wars or whatever, but let's just stick with Sharknado. So
let's go with something really serious here.
Yes. So why did God allow Sharknado to happen? Well, one answer is that there's some value in all of the people who contributed to Sharknado's existence, the writers, the people who were called on to punch up the script and didn't just say, this is unpunch-upable, it should be destroyed. The producers, the director, the actors.
I feel like we could also be saying this about Deathbed, the bed that eats.
Possibly. I like
yes.
that. Yes, you could sort of imagine a version of the Michelangelo, God and Adam painting with Flava Flav with his clock.
If somebody hasn't done that, somebody should.
Right. Yeah. So why, there's some value in all of these people. This whole like, I'm remembering when I was briefly living in Pittsburgh, there's a local newspaper. It was called In Pittsburgh, and they had. It was one of those, like, I feel like a lot more of these existed like 20 years ago, but like those like independent local weeklies, those kinds of newspapers, and
with the ads in the back.
That kind of newspaper.
Y'all know what I mean, right?
I don't remember if they had ads in the back, but it was that kind of newspaper. And they did have the most savage movie reviews in there. I remember there was a review of, was it 3,000 Miles from Graceland, that started out by saying that the existence of this movie should be a deep source of shame to the writer, director, actors, grips, etc. Anybody who ever served them a cup of coffee, and is the cinematic equivalent of a criminal record. So you take that whole laundry list of people who conspired to bring Sharknado into the world, and you say, well, there's some value in all of these people having free will. That if God is like somehow stopping them from doing these things, or
then God is interfering with their free will.
And since there's value to people being able to have and exercise free will, then this gives us a reason why a loving God would have permitted Sharknado to happen.
This is kind of a subset of the greater good argument.
Yeah,
I think
it's a specific.
The greater good is the free will.
Right. I kind of think so. I don't know. Maybe you have a different take.
I don't watch enough movies to know.
All right. I haven't even seen this. I'm gonna have to find it.
What was that I said earlier? You can always count on J. Andrew.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh my God. All right. He did do this. I'll display it in a second.
I love the expression on my face.
Here we go.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, if you don't think that there is free will, you definitely cannot use this as a defense against
No,
the
you
problem
cannot.
of evil. You have to believe that there's free will, and I think you have to believe that there's maybe even a specific kind of free will. I mean, I say maybe because it's complicated and slippery, since there are a lot of different proposed definitions of free will floating around. But
it's philosophy. What do you expect?
Yeah, it's philosophy. People are going to disagree about everything. But
especially definitions.
Yeah, right. So
I love the look on my face.
This is amazing. This is an example I have been trotting out for many years. This is the first time it's been translated into imagery. I remember. I remember like sitting, on the floor at a restaurant in Ulsan, South Korea in 2010, having an argument with somebody about it. Where I was like, okay, look, what if I say it's a leprechaun on my wrist? So,
this is becoming ever more complicated.
Yeah, but all right. So there are lots of different definitions of free will that different philosophers have suggested. There are some in which it would be no problem for God to create everybody with no desire to do terrible things.
But is that free will?
Yeah, well,
because we're already being restrained.
Well, we're not being restrained. We're just being created without the desire that we'd have to be restrained from.
But our possibilities have been restricted.
For sure.
Have been constrained. So is that going to count as free will?
So like Harry Frankfurt is a big 20th century philosopher who's famous for Frankfurt examples about free will. I do not remember if we got into those during the free will episode, but I
don't remember.
Yeah, I think maybe
Smith and Jones and Black and the brain transplants and not transplants.
Like putting a chip in your brain, to control your behavior. So Frankfurt's view, or at least one version of his view he advocated at one time. I'm saying that just to be careful because I realize, as I said, I'm not sure if this was his consistent view throughout a long career of thinking about this stuff. But certainly, what he proposes at one time is that what makes something free will, what makes it under your control in the sense that you need to be responsible for it, is that you're acting on your higher order desires. So roughly, you're not just doing what you prefer to do, but you're doing what you prefer to do.
Yeah, what you want to do.
And I don't think. We established in that installment that we do disagree about free will. But
I think we did, yeah.
But I don't think either of us are very sympathetic to that definition. But if you were to accept that definition, then God could just create everybody without the desire to make Sharknado, or the desire to make Sharknado, and it wouldn't be made, and no free will would be violated, along the line. But of course, you can say, is that really what we mean by free will? And maybe if you have a sufficiently robust definition of free will, maybe there is nothing that God could do that would lead to a situation where nobody had that desire. And if you think that like the value of free will is best served by letting everybody actually carry out all of their desires, no matter how depraved, then that might be the greater good that God would be serving by allowing what would otherwise look like unnecessary suffering to theater audiences. So. I don't know. Was Sharknado in the theaters, or was that straight to?
No, it was.
Okay, it was. All right.
I think Sharknado 2 might not have been.
Oh, that might have been straight to DVD.
No, possibly. Hopefully.
So, yeah. It is interesting because I will say that, there is even like in the Bible, God hardens Pharaoh's heart. So he doesn't let the Israelites go because he wants things to play out in a certain way. So there is some there is some precedence there within, within the Judeo-Christian religious tradition for saying that, like, a all PKG being can at least sometimes interfere with your free will. I've also always wondered, like, is it actually what are the rules for what would count as meddling with your free will, right? Like, so in other words, if
are you just gonna leave that up there for the whole time?
I buy it. It's very funny. All right. Enough of that.
I was actually looking through my old PowerPoints about free will the other night, and in one of them I had put a quote by a friend of ours, actually Ben's sister's best friend, she had posted on Facebook about how she had asked her son to do something for his grandmother, and her son said, "Well, I guess there really is no such thing as free will."
Yeah, right. So what are the rules here? Like if Skippy the bear is about to shoot someone,
Ben, I asked you.
and God miraculously transports his victim to safety, does that count as interfering with Skippy's free will? I mean, you're foiling his plan, but I wonder, right?
But he's still carrying out his plan. He's still acting in exactly the way that he had planned to act.
Yeah, he's acting exactly right. Exactly.
Like if a bird had flown in front and had taken the bullet instead of it hitting the bird has not foiled his free will. It's just changed the aftermath.
Which seems like a big problem for the free will defense. Because if you could always have a convenient bird fly into the path of the bullet, then you could, and parallel things, right? If there are always things, or almost always things, that certainly in a vast category of cases, there are things that we could come up with without too much creativity that an all-powerful being could do to foil somebody's plan.
I wasn't talking about God sending the bird. I was just saying if a bird happened to get in the way, that his free will wouldn't have been, because he would still be doing, going through the actions that he wanted to go through.
Sure. So your conclusion was that similarly, God would
not be affecting his free will by spiriting the victim out of the way.
Right. So that's one problem with the free will defense. It doesn't seem like it could explain why not do that. There's also a problem about.
Hang on. Let's address something. The idea behind this is that free will is the greatest good.
Right.
That not having free will would be worse than anything else you could think of that's bad. So keeping free will is going to trump everything.
Right. Yeah. Was that a response to something in the comment, or were you just trying to be clear for the?
No, it's been the pediatric cancer has been brought up a few times. How does this?
Yeah, right. Okay.
But that's the idea, just that this trumps everything.
Right. So there, although the pediatric cancer does get us to another objection, but I was going to say before we get to that one, that another problem with this is it seems like if the K at all PKG includes knowing what's going to happen before it happens, and presumably even knowing what would hypothetically happen, like what all the possibilities are, right, before they happen, then you could also say that an all PKG being could know that if a particular person was born, all the things that they would do, and they could just and that all PKG being could just stop that particular conception from taking place. And that doesn't obviously seem, it's not obvious whose free will is violated, especially if it would have been an unplanned pregnancy anyway. So that's another problem. I think the pediatric cancer thing also gets to a different objection, which is that earlier, as you said earlier, there's we can divide our list of evils into human evils, like the existence of Sharknado, and natural evils, like the existence of tsunamis, whatever. Or actual tornadoes, not sharknadoes. Or if there actually was a sharknado, the existence of the actual sharknado would count as natural evil, presumably. I don't think anybody. I assume in Sharknado, the movie Sharknado, like that's not somebody's plan is to create a Sharknado. This is something that just happens. And even if you think the free will defense explains human evil, it doesn't seem to go very far in explaining natural evil. And there are some moves that you can make to try to bring some of the natural evil stuff under the heading of like results of human free will, like
things that are a result of climate change.
Right, climate change certainly would be a case in point. You could even say, like during the intro to philosophy classes, when we've been talking about philosophy of religion, I've even had students say, like, well, people are choosing to live in earthquake-prone areas or whatever. That's still a human choice there. Although, if you're going to say that, you still have a problem with the first earthquake to happen there, without which presumably no one would have any way of knowing that they were choosing to live in an earthquake-prone area. And oh my God, there's a shark.
I saw that.
In Australia. That's the greater good. How badass it is. So that's yes, that's one thing. You could also say that some of this stuff like is still like, okay, even if you know that by doing action A you're risking the consequence of B, you could still raise a question about whether that explains why an all-loving being would set things up in that way. Like if I let everybody know in advance that anybody who cuts me off in line is going to have acid splashed in their face, and I announce that frequently, and first time I encounter anybody, I tell them that just to make sure everybody's.
You didn't tell me that.
This is a hypothetical.
Oh.
It's as our leprechaun would say, it's a thought experiment. And then, yeah, I think that's right. So then somebody does. So, well, you were warned, and a splash acid in their face. Okay, is what happened a result of their free decision? Maybe, but presumably that doesn't get me off the hook for acting in this way, right?
No,
that it's still not morally admirable to
they acted imprudently and you acted immorally.
Right, exactly. So you could similarly say, even when people know about earthquakes, and let's assume that everybody in the earthquake-prone town has lots of economic options, to go live somewhere else, etc., they might have acted imprudently, but this still seems very hard to explain why a all-G being would set things up in this way, right? So that's another problem for the free will defense. There are a bunch of different defenses against the problem of evil. I mean, I think the ones we've gone over are some of the most popular ones. There's also like really fun stuff like the ontological defense, not to be confused with the ontological argument, which says that good can't exist without evil existing. That it's can get into some really poetic metaphors here. It's like shadow, and light, That's and
evil is the absence of good. It's not a thing in itself.
Right.
But that just doesn't seem realistic.
And it certainly doesn't seem to explain, like, okay, even if you think some of this means that we got to have a little around the edges or something, like, do we really need to have genocide? You
wouldn't think so.
You wouldn't think so. So one of the so if you don't find any of these terribly compelling, and you also, you also don't, want to just like consult Pat Robertson or his successors every time something bad happens, so they can tell you the reason that God told them that it happened.
Oh boy.
So then, I guess one way to think about this. So if you read like William Rowe's stuff about,
yeah, it's depressing.
Yes, I'm not going to use his example.
Thank you.
But if you read his stuff about the problem of evil, then he does make an interesting point, right? So you have the
Levi.
Well, you see, that just pushes the question back.
Everybody loves church lady.
Yeah. But yes. But why does God allow permitting Satan to do all of these things?
Why though?
Exactly. All right. So William Rowe's point goes roughly like this: that you can that if where you go at this point in the conversation, if you don't find any of the suggestions on the market for explanations of the problem of evil particularly compelling, you can go a couple different directions depending on whether you think that any of the arguments for the existence of God are very compelling, right? Or whether you just take yourself to have good reasons to believe in the existence of God, which doesn't even necessarily mean that you find one of the arguments compelling. It could be that you have some view like Alvin Plantinga has. Plantinga's still alive, right? Present tense, Alvin Plantinga has. Sure. Okay, probably is. Alvin Plantinga has or had. So Plantinga's view is that since he thinks that knowledge is true belief that's caused by a reliable belief forming process, and he thinks that the way that like God is at work in the heart of a believer is a reliable belief forming process.
So belief in God is a properly basic belief, as he would say.
Right. So if you think what Plantinga thinks, or if you think that one of the traditional arguments for the existence of God is compelling, or in some way or another you believe yourself to be justified in believing in God, other than this, right? Other than this wrinkle about the
problem. A lot of people take themselves to be justified through personal experience.
Right.
That's a big, people feel like they've experienced the hand of God at work in their lives.
Right. So if you have any of these views, then obviously
they don't sit around and think about the ontological argument. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. That's probably very few people. I would actually love to meet the person who was an atheist and became a believer because the ontological argument was just so convincing to
Absolutely.
him.
Absolutely.
That would be an amazing dinner. But
of spaghetti.
So all right. So if none of these things are true, right? If you're if you're some jerk like me, you say, oh, well, more reason not to believe that this being exists. But if you're not some jerk like me, if you think that you have some good reason, then another option that's a exciting option, a lot of kids are trying it these days, is called skeptical theism. So skeptical theism is basically what Jenn said earlier about, which is describing the God's great plan route, which is to say, okay, God exists, and so God must have some good reason for allowing things that seem to us like unnecessary suffering. But why should we think that we, with our weak and puny monkey brains, can fathom God's great plan? Which, to be fair, I think there is something you can say for this intuitively. Like, you can say, well, it does live forever on YouTube, so you could go back to your desk later. So you can say that, it is reasonable, I think, that I don't know. It's like that Wittgenstein line about how if lions could speak, we wouldn't understand what they said, which, okay, fair enough. To be fair, I've never been completely sure whether that's right. I mean, when our cat Shabazz meows, sometimes I have no idea what he's getting at, but sometimes
you do.
Sometimes it's pretty clear, what he's trying to say.
No, earthquakes are not morally wrong.
Yeah, earthquakes aren't morally wrong, but causing earthquakes would presumably be morally wrong. Or to put it,
a person bringing about an earthquake would be wrong, but the earthquake itself.
Yeah, earthquakes are just unnecessary, like things that cause
natural evil,
apparently unnecessary suffering. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, why would a being that combined perfect goodness with absolute power, so in other words, would have the power to prevent it, and being good would presumably want to prevent it? Why would that being, want earthquakes to happen? That's the issue. And even, all right, so maybe we would understand the lions, but presumably the lions wouldn't, probably some lion stuff we wouldn't understand. And the lions almost certainly would not be able, the lions were tuned into Philosophy Friday, they'll be lost. I don't think the lions would have the concepts grasp it. And then, and hey, that's humans and lions. Those are both large mammals with whose brains have similar evolutionary histories, etc. The gap between either a human brain or a lion brain and the infinite, all-knowing creator of the universe is,
there's a big difference there.
Yeah, is infinitely large, right? The gap between a human and a lion brain is finitely large. And look, I would even, if I were in a position to, I don't know, now that Stephen Hawking's dead, who's a famous physicist.
What?
Who's a famous physicist?
Oh, I thought, okay. I don't know.
Okay, well, whatever. Stephen Hawking was still alive.
Who does this science crap?
And he were having dinner with a bunch of theoretical physicist friends, and for some reason also me, and they got to talking about physics at dinner. I would not expect to be able to follow the conversation.
No.
And we're all human beings, in this scenario. But I wouldn't be able to do this. So you think, well, okay. So why should you think you'd be able to understand the reasons why this infinite mind would do the things that it does? That should be totally beyond your grasp. And so I think there is something to be said in favor of that.
That's just obviously true. That if there is the kind of God that we conceive of, then there is this giant difference and we can't understand.
That said, there are a couple of issues you could raise with this. Most obviously, that it's not obvious that skeptical theism is compatible with saying that bringing things up that seem good to us as evidence of the beneficence of God and saying that, God did that, for these loving reasons or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I understand why these good things happen, but I can't understand why these bad things happened.
Exactly. And certainly it doesn't seem like you can be a skeptical theist and also believe and also accept the argument from design, because if you accept the argument from design, in other words, if you're using the way that the world is as evidence for the existence of God, it doesn't really seem like you can rule out using the way that the world is as evidence against the existence of God on the grounds that we have no idea why God would do things one way or another. If we say, oh, look at all this evidence of design, that seems to show that we're saying we have some idea why an infinite being would set things up in this way, right? Oh, see this evidence of design, see God's plan at work here, this couldn't have come about by chance. This is clearly
But we don't need to know why. We could come across a watch. We wouldn't necessarily have to know why it was set up the way that it was. What are you doing?
I'll show you in a moment.
Is this more J. Andrew?
It is more J. Andrew, yes. So, okay, so yeah, you could say, I remember like some lecture I watched. I was teaching a philosophy of religion class at Rutgers, and there was some lecture I found in skeptical theism. I do not remember the prof's name. My apologies, but he had an analogy about finding an alien spacecraft, and you don't know exactly what the different parts are for, but you know, like
you can see that it's clearly designed for some end, even if you don't know what it is.
So you might be able to say something there to salvage the argument. You know, to make the argument from design compatible. I will say that.
What in the world is happening there?
So Andy sent us Lion Thor. Lion Thor could follow Philosophy Fridays because its existence gives lions morals. This is it's a lot going on in this reference. This is I don't remember exactly how it came up, but one of the debate breakdowns I did with Mark and Ryan for like a religion debate, somehow or another Lion Thor came up. I do not recall how.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are a couple of criticisms you could make even there, not of Lion Thor, but of the
no, we would never criticize Lion Thor,
but of the argument. So say, well, you know, we understand that the spaceship is designed by contrasting it with the non-designed universe around it. In other words, you know, we know the difference between something that seems designed and something that seems to just come about by happenstance. That itself might seem to indicate that, you know, that we don't think, you know, we don't perceive the just the normal universe most of the time as being designed. Could also say that, you know, that we have some of the way that we would perceive the spaceship as designed is that we have some concept of technology, you know, and so even if this is much more advanced technology than ours, you know, like we know that we make things like this, you know, we can't really contrast, you know, we can't like look into all the possible versions of the universe and compare the design to the undesigned ones. So, you know, you know, I'm not sure. Like I feel I'm not 100% sure if it makes sense to combine skeptical theism with the argument from design. It feels to me like you might have to choose at some point between taking the way the universe is as evidence for God and saying that the way the universe is can't be evidence against God. I'm not sure. I am fairly confident that you can't like do a lot of things that I think in the normal religious posture you would do, like saying, you know, thank you, God, for doing this thing that you obviously did for this benevolent reason, you know, but
yeah, if God's beyond our understanding, then God's beyond our understanding.
Fair enough.
One thing that somebody over there made me think of that you missed was the soul building theodicy, which is that if bad things happen to you, you become a better person. You know, how if you never have to face adversity, then you never grow as a person. You know, you just go sailing through life. Whereas if you have to face bad things, if bad things happen to you, if bad things happen to people that you love, then you become a stronger and better person for it. And I think we can just dispense with that by saying that clearly that is not always the case.
Yeah, right. I mean, there are
some people become bitter and
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't always make people.
Yeah, some people are abused as children and like grow up to grow up to you know, I don't know, work for Child Protective Services or something. Some people are abused by children and then they pass on
abused as children.
Yeah, are abused as children. Yeah, not abused by children. Come on, don't be a loser. Don't let the children abuse you. Some people are abused as children, and then they go on to abuse their own children. You know, so it clearly is not a reliable method for making people better. And you can also point out, like, I don't know. I mean, especially if especially when you're talking about, you know, like depending on who's suffering and everything, but it's like, oh, hey, I'm, you know, if you're having some people like, you know, like if you're a parent and your young child dies horribly, and you know that might be suffering, even if it does work out as intended. That seems like a pretty, like, okay, so the young child is just a, you
How
know,
does the young child benefit in this scenario?
right, exactly, like they're just a tool to use to make you a better person.
Yeah, and that seems not like something we would want from the Omni God.
Right. All right.
You know, they say whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I guess that's the idea. But then, what if it does kill you? What did it do for you then?
I'm just going like this because I know I'm saying this too much and it's getting obnoxious, but there's a Simpsons for that.
Oh boy. Between Ben, there's a Simpsons for that, and then Ben's mom, Kathy, who's very rapidly falling into there's a Mitfords for that. There's a something for everything.
Yeah, we bought her a book.
Giant book
of
letters between the Mitford sisters, and she's just been diving headfirst into the Mitfords lately. And a couple times over the last several days, she's been like, you know, there's a Mitfords for that, and I was like, oh no, here we go. I need to find something for that for me.
But right,
there's a sports reference for that.
Yeah, I can tell that there's a Skip Bayless for that.
There's a Stephen A for that.
Yeah. So when we first started dating, I saw so many hours of these two people. This was back when they were on the same show on ESPN.
First Take, yeah.
Yeah. But
and now they're on separate shows, so twice the shows, twice the joy. There's a Peanuts cartoon for that. That would also be great.
Right. Yeah.
Since there is a group called Team Snoopy.
But yeah, somebody says, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And Dr. Hibbert, you know, is the children's doctor, is very jovial. Says, oh, but that's not true. Sometimes it just makes you horribly weak. So.
Do you remember in the Family Guy when what's his name is making Red Bull with kerosene? His Red Bull is fuel, kerosene is fuel, therefore kerosene is Red Bull. And Brian's trying to talk him out of it, and he says, whatever kills me makes me stronger. Yeah, anyway, I love Stephen A.
Yeah.
And Skip.
Yeah, no, if you're a,
yeah, exactly.
Yep. And you say, oh, okay, the child will go to heaven, but like if they're dying of a terrible disease, they're being horribly tortured before then. So
yeah, it would have to be, I don't know, like maybe if all the deaths were like car accident, your lights go out, and then you go to heaven, maybe. But
yeah. Anyway, before this gets really morbid, I think we're going to cut it off there for this evening. So coming up in 2 days on Sunday for the Sunday night debate breakdown, Conrad Hamilton and Matt McManus are going to be on. We're going to watch the Zizek Hanan debate. On Monday, Jason Miles and Anna Kasparian are both going to be on the main show. Maybe the first time Jason and Anna have been in the same virtual space. Should be a fun conversation. Also going to have somebody from Buffalo DSA on there to talk about India Walton's victory. So lots and lots of good stuff coming up. My conversation with Roberto Asfalm about the NFL thing, the race norming, is going to drop for patrons next Thursday. Article he co-wrote with Cedric Johnson. So all good stuff. Looking forward to all of that. And also, since people are watching this, for anybody who just tunes in for Philosophy Friday, if you'd like to take either a Hume or a Kant class from me, If either, one of, still in discussions with the RU people about which one it would be. If it happened, let me know which one of those you'd be more interested in. And with that in mind, I will thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody next week. Left is best.
Team Snoopy forever.